Hi, I'm Gail Sokol, and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to have a special edition for Valentine's Day, and it's one of my most favorite holidays. So today we're going to be making a passion fruit mousse tart, and they're individual tarts, so you can share one or you can have one on your own. So we're going to be making a chocolate cookie crust, a beautiful, delicious ganache flavored with passion fruit liqueur, a passion fruit mousse, and decorating it all with a heart made of chocolate. So we're going to start with our chocolate cookie crust. We're going to start this in the food processor because it's a lot easier. So we have 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. You're just going to put that right in. 3/4 cup of confectioner sugar. It mixes in really nicely. That's powdered sugar, remember. And 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. That's what's going to make it so chocolatey. Almost like a chocolate sugar cookie. And we're just going to pulse this lightly, just until everything sort of blends together. Doesn't have to be perfect, don't worry about it. All right, done. And then there's going to be a little bit of powdery stuff, so try not to inhale that. 1 stick of unsalted butter cubed, and that is cold butter. And so far it sounds like a flaky pie crust, right? But wait, we're going to pulse it until we get little pieces. Okay? We're going to get little pieces. So we have little pieces of butter. I will show you. So like little lumpy bumps of butter. Now, what makes this what's known as a pâte sucrée or a sugar cookie crust is the egg. This is an enriched ingredient, so we don't use ice water like we would for a flaky pie crust. And now we're just going to pulse this. And it's not going to look like it's going to form a ball, but don't add any more liquid. The first time I made this, I thought, oh, it's so, it's so dry. It's going to need more liquid. Well, don't do it. It's not going to. So you're going to take it off the base, and you're going to pour it into a bowl. And it does not look like a crust yet. But this is the real sort of interesting part, because as you push down into it, it will sort of come together, almost like wet sand or wet mud, but not that wet, sort of moistened, and you can squeeze it into a ball or a dough, and that's what's going to keep it so tender. It has no water. And if you recall in other videos, we've talked about gluten formation. There's gluten in wheat flour, and in all-purpose flour there is gluten-forming proteins, but we're not really developing them because we're not adding any water. We've added fat and we've added egg. That's it. And although there's only a little bit of water in the egg, it's not going to add enough that it's going to make it tough or anything. So here we go. See how it's coming together into sort of a ball of dough. You don't really want to knead it, but you want to use your hands for this. So it's going to come together. Now it feels sort of like wet mud. All right, work it, and then gather it together. And then we're going to put it on a piece of parchment paper right over here. Not parchment paper, plastic wrap. Okay. Now with one hand, my one clean hand, I'm going to wrap this baby up. And I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes to an hour, just to let it rest a little bit. And any gluten that we did develop, because there might have been a tiny, tiny bit, it will relax. All right, so we'll just give it a rest for 30 minutes. While our crust is chilling, we're going to make our passion fruit custard for our passion fruit mousse. Now, it's also called a curd, which is a stovetop custard. And we start with a pot on the stove, and we're going to be starting with 2/3 cup of granulated sugar. So we're going to pour that right into our heavy-duty small saucepan. So make sure it's a heavy-duty saucepan, so it's not this thin little thing, so it can actually handle the heat. 2 tablespoons of starch. And our starch is a really good ingredient, not just to thicken. It's actually going to help do a few other things I'll discuss in a second. So we're going to make sure that we sort of stir the sugar and the starch a little bit. Get that going. I haven't turned on the heat just yet. And we're going to be adding 4 egg yolks, no whites, just yolks. If you see a lot of custard recipes, many times they will have just the yolk. They will not have the white. And we're just going to mix that up. Okay. It's going to be thick because we have to add our passion fruit puree. So I have 1/3 cup of passion fruit puree, and if you've never seen it before, it's gorgeous. Some grocery stores carry it, specialty food stores, or you can get it online. But you can see the seeds, and that's what it looks like if you cut into the actual passion fruit. Sometimes you can actually even see a fresh passion fruit or two in the grocery store under the exotic fruit section that a lot of them have now. But I did not see any to show you at this point. So we're going to be mixing this up. I'm going to turn on my heat, but you really need to make sure that your sugar and your eggs are completely mixed in. And I'm also mixing in 4 tablespoons of softened butter. So this is very typical of a curd, a C-U-R-D, which is a custard known as a stovetop custard because we're making it on top of a stove or a hot plate like I am. And it's not made in the oven like a creme brulee, which would be an oven custard. Now the cool thing about the cornstarch, remember we added the 2 tablespoons of cornstarch? Cornstarch and any starch like flour will actually elevate. It'll raise the coagulation temperature of egg yolks because you never want to heat egg yolks to a boil because they'll curdle. They'll actually get like scrambled eggs. And we don't want passion fruit scrambled eggs because I don't think that would taste so good. So I'm putting the heat on basically medium high. I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for our cornstarch. Now granulated sugar also interferes with that coagulation as well and raises that coagulation temperature of egg yolks. So we're going to be mixing this and stirring this for maybe 6 to 8 minutes until it gets nice and thick. And it will come to a boil, and that will kill any salmonella that could be in our egg yolks. So you want to get it to about 160 degrees, but I'm going to let the boiling and those little bubbles tell me. So passion fruit does bubble up, so you got to be careful. If you need to take it off the heat every once in a while, take it off the heat. But you really do want to see it bubble, and it will get nice and thick. And this is the basis of our curd or our custard. So when an egg heats up, it actually has some structure to it, right? It coagulates and it gets firm. If you've ever made an egg, like frying an egg or a scrambled egg, it'll do the same thing here as well. But if we add some interfering agents with that coagulation, like granulated sugar or starch, it'll sort of boost up that temperature of coagulation so it won't happen so fast. Those eggs won't join together so tightly and create this curdling that we don't want to see. So I'm going to, yes, I know I'm moving it. It beeped at me. So I'm not at the boil yet, but I just wanted to make sure. Now let me stop stirring. I just want to see if I'm almost at the boil. You can almost see it sort of shimmying a little bit. It's a beautiful color, isn't it? It's a lovely yellow. And if you don't like this color, because passion fruit on the outside is pinkish looking, almost like a rosy color. And on the inside, it's more this color, like orange. So you can do whatever you want. You could do a few drops of orange food coloring to make it pop, or you could do a little bit of a rose food coloring if you wanted to, but I like this, so I'm going to leave it. I like the orange. Really pretty. Really fun. It'd be a nice contrast to our chocolate cookie crust. All right, so we're almost at a boil. I can feel bubbles coming. And you can see bubbles on the side, so there it goes. See, it's bubbling? And you want to let it bubble for a while. And it should thicken a little bit because of that cornstarch. It's not going to be totally too thick. It's going to take some time to do that. We're going to let that chill in the fridge, and it will thicken as it cools. But you can see how nice and bubbly it is? Ooh, that's beautiful. I'm going to let it go for about a minute. Okay. And if it gets too hot and too bubbly, we're going to take it off the heat for a second, and then we put it back on. Now again, it's not going to get too thick, so don't get upset if it's not. And don't worry about those seeds in there. Those seeds are yummy and they're beautiful to look at too. The passion fruit, they're perfectly edible. So I have reached a boil, and I'm now going to come over to my bowl, and I'm going to pour the curd into my saucepan, my bowl. I'm going to pour it into a bowl, and you can see it's sort of runny. Well, I'm going to add the remainder. I have 3 tablespoons of more passion fruit puree, just to give it a little more zip. We're just going to add that in with a spoon, and then we're going to cover it with plastic wrap, and we're going to chill it in the refrigerator. And it may take 3 or 4 hours if you want to rush it a little bit because you're in a hurry for these beautiful passion fruit tarts. You can actually put this into a bowl of icy water and actually speed the process up a little bit. And yes, I am putting this directly on the surface because I don't want a skin to form. So I'm actually going to put this right on the surface, and then I'm going to go in the fridge and let it cool down. So now it's time to make our passion fruit ganache, and that's going to go on the bottom of our fully baked tart shells. So we're going to start with 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream, and we've made ganache before. It's just heavy cream and chocolate, and sometimes there are other accoutrements added, and today we're going to be adding passion fruit liqueur. Yum. And it's so delicious. I've never had it before, and it's superb. I put many things in ganache, like cognac and rum and different things like that, but passion fruit liqueur gives it a little something extra. So we're looking for a bubble, a boil, a soft boil for our heavy cream, but don't walk away from this because it will overflow. There is some water in this, and once it reaches the boiling point, it will actually push the heavy cream over. So you really want to make sure that it comes to a boil while you are in attendance, and don't leave it alone. Once it comes to a boil, you're going to shut off the heat, and we're going to put in 1.5 cups of high quality chocolate chips or chopped semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate. You decide, but make it a high quality. All right, so we're going to push the heat up on this. This is going to take a second to come to a boil. And why am I not putting in my passion fruit liqueur now? Because it would evaporate and it would defeat the whole purpose. You wouldn't really taste it. So we're going to wait until our chocolate and cream sort of get together and the chocolate will melt. But you got to see this. This is gorgeous. It smells so fragrant. Passion fruit in itself is such a fragrant fruit. If you've never tried it, you can buy passion fruit juice, and we're going to have an upcoming video with the juice, and you'll see. Oh, here it goes. We're at a boil. Just want to make sure that we're at a full boil. And then I'm going to shut off my heat because I want all of my chocolate to melt. All right. So I'm going to shut this off. It's at a nice rolling boil. Shut it off. And we're going to put in 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. There we go, every one of them. And we're just going to gently stir. You don't want them to get caught in the middle of the whisk, but you do want them to melt. So give it a second. I'm always in a rush to melt them because I love the ganache and I love to see it sort of come together. But as you see the chocolate melting, you'll see the middle part start turning dark, deep chocolate. Watch, it's going to happen. And then you're going to get into all the edges so that you get all that chocolate melted. This is a beautiful thing. And if you have any leftover, I hope we have some leftover, you want to freeze this and you want to save it for when the next time you may want a ice cream sundae, or the next time you want to pour it over a brownie or a piece of chocolate cake, or you have company coming. So I always have ganache in my freezer. I usually have a lot of ganache in my freezer. I really do. See that dark center? See it coming? That's what I love to look for. And then you start going around your edges. All right, and you want to whisk for this. You don't want a spoon and you don't want a fork. You really want to whisk. So get yourself a good whisk. And you want to whisk all that chocolate till it's completely melted. and it will take a few minutes. Sometimes people put a piece of plastic wrap over it or pour it into a bowl with plastic wrap over it, not onto the saucepan. But I find it causes condensation, and you might get some water in your ganache and water it down. And I don't want the chocolate to get hard or seize up or water down that ganache. So give it a few seconds, and then we're going to whisk in our beautiful passion fruit liqueur. It's almost there. See how beautiful that is? You can see. You can still see tiny little pieces of that chocolate. So when you're at this point, you want to keep on stirring, and you want to make sure, I find that the saucepan maintains that warmth so that the chocolate does have a chance to melt. And depending on how much cocoa butter you have in your chocolate that you use and the brand, some will melt faster than others. So it depends. Depends on your chips. It depends on what you want to use. See, you can actually see it. There's very few. There may be a few air bubbles, but most of the chocolate is melted. So I'm going to take my luscious passion fruit liqueur, 2 tablespoons. Now, if you don't want to add any passion fruit liqueur, you don't have to. You can not add anything. Trust me, this ganache needs nothing to make it taste delicious. But this just sort of pushes it over the edge because that's our theme, right? Passion is our theme for Valentine's Day. See how beautiful and creamy that looks now? Oh, I can smell it. Yummy. All right, so I'm going to pour it into a bowl, and I'm just going to let it sit at room temperature till it thickens a little bit. If I wanted it to get super thick, I would put it in the refrigerator. But right now, we're just going to let it sit out until our pastries are done. So our chocolate cookie crust has been chilling for about 30 minutes. It can even chill overnight if you want to. Just leave it out for a little bit so it gets a little bit softer. And while our curd and our ganache are sort of cooling down and thickening, we're going to take our dough and we're going to divide it. Now I'm only going to make 3 for you because I've already baked some off. This will make 6 tarts, and I love to put them, I'm going to divide this up into 6 pieces ultimately, but because I'm only making 3, I'm going to rewrap about half of it. And I love making them in these beautiful false bottom little scalloped edge tart pans. This is about 4 inches in diameter. If you want to do something 3 inches or a little bit deeper, that's fine too. If you want to make one big one 9-inch or 10-inch, the dough will be enough to fill that as well. But these are really nice if you want to share with your sweetie on Valentine's Day, or if you want to have something on your, by yourself and not share at all. Some people are a little funny about their pastries. They like sometimes not to share. I do not like to share. I like to eat it by myself. So we're going to do a little flour on our work surface. And we're going to brush the flour off, so don't get upset that it's a dark dough and it is a white flour. We're going to roll. So we're going to get at least the diameter of one of these tart shells. Sometimes I like to spray the tart shell with nonstick cooking spray, but there's enough butter in this dough that it will not stick, trust me. They will not stick. So the only thing that is sticking is my dough to my rolling pin. So I'm going to put a little more flour there. All right, and keep rotating it. And yes, there is a crack. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen. This is a very tender dough. So we are going to see cracks because it really isn't a super, super tough dough. Keep going. You want to get it so it's about maybe 1/4 inch thick. And I don't even mark around it. Just bring the tart pan over, put the crust into the tart shell, and just push down gently. You don't want to force this in. You just want to lift it up gently. Remember, there's very little gluten formed here. So we really want to treat this pastry very gently. And it will crack and it will split a little bit, but don't worry, we're going to fix it. So As you see that it's all in there, just push it out like that and use your rolling pin or even your fingers and sort of just push. All right, and just get all that excess off. All right. And if you see that you have some air in there, just push in, make sure all your pastry is firmly in. I sort of go around, make sure everything is sort of perfect as possible, and put it on a baking sheet. You don't want to put those in the oven without a baking sheet on underneath them, because if you even so much as pick that up like that, you'll lose it completely. So we're ready to do another one. Some people don't recommend re-rolling the scraps. I don't want to waste them. Some people say they're a little tougher. Some chefs say they're a little tougher. I like to re-roll them. If you don't have to re-roll them, I put them on the side. If I need them, I will. Otherwise, I bake them off. And it's a nice little snack for the chef. I like that. So we're going to do another one. We're only going to do about 3 total because I have 3 more already done. And we are going to bake these blind. And that is the kookiest phrase ever. It really, really is. I don't really know how it got its name, baking blind, and I've really, really tried to find out. So if anyone knows, please contact me at gailsokol.com. I really have no idea how that got started, that phrase. I don't know if it's from this country or what, but baking blind means you're going to bake the pie crust itself, or the tart crust, without any filling in it. All right, you know, if you make like an apple pie, usually you put the apples in with the uncooked filling, or the unbaked filling, the unbaked crust. You put the apples in and you bake everything all together, right? Pumpkin pie, same thing. Here, we're not doing that. Here, we're actually going to be baking the crust first on its own. And doing that, the act of doing that is known as baking blind. All right. I used to kid around with the students in my class, and I said, you have to put a blindfold on, you turn the chef around a few times, and then you see if they get to the oven. And that's baking blind. They did not laugh. It wasn't funny. So here I have my second one. Very easy. All right, very easy. And I do have some scraps left over, so if I wanted to, I could probably get an extra one. And it probably would not be any tougher. But if you did want to make a little cookie, like roll it out and just bake it off separately, that would make a nice little chocolate cookie, a little like sugar cookie. Or you could cut it out into different shapes. So I'm just going to keep rotating. And yes, I see cracks. Don't worry about those cracks, because we're just going to mend them back together super easily. And what I wanted to say before, but I never did it because I don't think I had enough flour, you can actually take a pastry brush. Okay, this is pastry brush, and just sort of fling that flour off if you think you've over-floured. So a pastry brush is really a nice thing to have. It really is a nice little tool to have. And they come in different sizes. Just don't use it for anything else, like painting your house. Just use it for flour, things like that. Or egg wash, do that. All right, now I got lots of cracks here. So just patch it together. You can even take one of the pieces of your dough that you have left over, if you needed some, to use it to patch on another piece of crust. All right, we're going to roll these over, push down, make sure that everything is, there's no holes, no cracks. Put them back together. Get everything out of the way. I'll bake those off later. And you want to have enough on the sides that when it bakes, it won't be too thin. Remember, it's going to hold ganache. It's going to hold a passion fruit filling and some other exciting things that we will get to. All right, so I have my 3 tarts ready to bake off. I have preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And now I have a fork, and I'm going to dock, or also known as stipple. Stipple, I did not make that up. And what you're going to do is put some holes in the bottom. This will also prevent any of these pastry bottoms from puffing up with steam. and we don't want that. Or shrinking down. That's why we bake blind with pie weights or beans. Some of you may have pie weights. They can be expensive, so if you buy a pound or two of any type of bean you want. I happen to have black beans. Just don't eat them, all right? So you're gonna line each of your tarts with a piece of parchment paper, all right? Piece of parchment. And I do make it a little bit bigger than the tart shell itself, and there's a reason why. And you're gonna fill it with beans. This is what baking blind is. So you're actually sort of making a bean filling, a fake bean filling, just to take up space to keep that crust up the sides so it does not shrink down. It's very important that it doesn't shrink down, or you would end up with just a flat disc, and you wouldn't be able to fill a flat disc. So we want it to have 3 dimensions. I've had some funny students, and one actually thought we were making bean pie. I said, no, we are not making bean pie. But you can use, I like to overfill the beans in the tart shells because I find it actually works a little better, and push them up the sides. Push them up the sides. You're going to put these in the oven for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to see you in 10 minutes, 375. So it's been about 10 minutes that our chocolate cookie crusts have been in the oven, baking blind, right? Now, they're not totally baked yet. They still need maybe 2 more minutes, maybe 3. But the parchment paper and the beans can come out now because they haven't shrunk. They look beautiful. And then you're just going to go right over to your bowl of beans and use those pastry edges, those pastry parchment paper edges to lift off the hot beans, because the beans are hot. Don't get burnt. So you're going to hold each corner, you're going to lift them up, make sure all the beans are out. And you can see there's maybe a little bit of soft spots over here that don't look totally baked. So we're going to put them back in the oven for about 2 or 3 minutes, that's all. And if any beans fall out like that, I wanted to show you what to do. You just pick them up. Be careful you don't burn yourself. Don't let them bake into the crust. Some people do that. You know, in certain cultures and certain countries, if you get like a baked bean or a little doll, it means you've, like Mardi Gras or whatever, you've won something, but not here. You'll just get a broken tooth. So we're going to put them back in the oven for maybe 2 minutes, okay? And they'll be fully done. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to use gelatin, and that's unflavored gelatin. So I have a teaspoon and a half of unflavored gelatin, right? It just looks like a powder. No sugar in it. It's not flavored with anything. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of water. Now, what am I going to use this for? Well, we're going to put it in some whipped cream because I want to stabilize that whipped cream before we put it into our passion fruit curd. And I'm mixing that with a tablespoon of cold water. It's got to be a cold liquid. And you see what that looks like? This gelatin is very granular right now. So if you were to put that in your mouth, it would taste like you ate sand. And we don't want that. So what we do is we let it bloom. It's actually called blooming the gelatin. So I'm just going to let it sit for a minute or 2, and it's going to actually swell by soaking in that 1 tablespoon of cold water. And it can be any liquid. It doesn't have to be water. Could have even been some cream. But I'm using water right now because it's just easiest. And then once it swells up, it looks like little, sort of like little beads that you might see that are full of liquid. And you can actually turn it upside down and it won't come out. So it's actually swelled up almost like a jellyfish. And then what I want to do is put it into some hot water and actually let it melt down. Now, when we beat up our heavy cream has to be very, very cold. So we want to make sure that this gets just barely warm without solidifying again. And then we're going to pour it down the edges after our whipped cream is beaten up to its full fluffy thickness. And then when we pour this in, it's going to stabilize it so that it will maintain its shape for several hours instead of maybe only a few hours. Sometimes whipped cream weeps and goes back to its original state, its liquid state, and we don't want that. We want these beautiful passion fruit mousse tarts to stay beautifully fluffy. So we're ready to finish off our mousse by actually folding whipped cream into our passion fruit curd, which is still in the fridge. So I want to get 2 cups of heavy cream whipped up so it's light and fluffy, and I want to stabilize it. So my gelatin has melted down, looks beautiful, and now I'm letting it cool down so it's sort of barely warm without actually re-solidifying. So I'm going to use my whip attachment. Now, because I don't want the whipped cream to go spewing everywhere, my little trick is if you have a guard, some of these mixers come with a guard, you can use that, and sometimes they don't even work that well. So what I've done over the years, I take a clean kitchen towel and I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to turn it up to high speed and I'm going to look at it every once in a while and stop the machine. So it's only going to take a few minutes, and then when it's halfway through, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of powdered or confectioner sugar. And that's all you need because the passion fruit curd is really sweet. I'm going to give it another minute, a little less than a minute. See what that looks like. I just lower it. So you can see I've beaten lots of air into it, but it's not ready yet. Turn it back up, cover it completely with that towel. This will really save you from having your walls splattered and yourself splattered with this heavy cream. When it gets a little thicker, it should be any time now. About now, I'm going to add my confectioner sugar. Okay, about 2 tablespoons, that's it. And then I'm going to beat it again. Always looking at my gelatin to make sure that it's okay and not getting too thick. Okay, let's see what we look like. Oh, we look beautiful. Look how nice and beautiful we look. Okay, so this is the point where I'm probably going to be adding my gelatin. All right, so I'm going to be beating that in. Let's up it a little bit. You just want to get that in there. It can't be too hot, and you don't want to put it directly onto the beater. All right, it's already beginning to solidify a little bit, so we want to make sure it gets in there. And you see how nice this whipped cream looks. You don't want to overly whip your cream, because if you do, you'll make butter. All right, so it's time to make our mousse. And that means we're going to take some whipped cream, which we've already whipped, and I've already let my passion fruit curd chill, and we're going to put a little bit of the whipped cream on top of the passion fruit curd, and then we're going to whisk it together because we want to lighten what we have here. The passion fruit curd is a little heavy, especially compared to the whipped cream. So let's lighten it up, and we'll just sort of mix it up. The color will get a little lighter. Don't worry, it's still beautiful. And we just want to get that whipped cream in. And once that's almost blended in, you can get rid of this, and get rid of that whisk, and then you're going to put the remainder of your whipped cream on top. So you always want to add light to heavy, always. And then we want to fold. So you're just going to fold it over by taking a rubber spatula and going down the center and then turning and coming up with the rubber spatula. And you can see it's going to get very moussey looking and just light and fluffy. And that's exactly what it should look like when it's moussey and beautiful. So you just keep doing that, sort of rotating the bowl in one direction and your rubber spatula in the other until you don't see any streaks of whipped cream. Keep going as much as you can. All right. And when you're done, you just want to chill this. You can chill it overnight, you can chill it for several hours, or you can just use it as it is now. It's beautiful, and it will stay a long time because we have that gelatin in there. All right, I'm going to go get my pastry crusts. All right, we have all the pieces made, and now we're ready to assemble. So I made the chocolate cookie crusts. They're cooled, and they're still in the pans. Leave them in the pans because you want to give it some structure. I'm going to take some of our ganache, and we're going to pour about 2 or 3 tablespoons in each tart and smooth it out. And what I like to do is set it in the fridge and let it get firm. And that's what ganache does. It gets sort of firm. These two have already been in the refrigerator, chilling and firming up, because we're going to pipe our mousse on top. It's going to look beautiful. So I have a pastry bag fitted with a star tip, a large star tip. And we're going to fill that with our luscious passion fruit mousse. All right, and we're going to fill that. And I'm only going to do 1 or 2 for you, but you're going to see how beautiful they look. Really, really nice. Whoops, coming out the other end. So you don't want to overfill your pastry bag. I usually fill it about halfway or so through. And I'm just going to see how it comes out. Great. Okay. So I'm going to go over to these that have already been chilled. And I'm just going to put some rosettes on them. All right. And we can refill our bag as we need to. We can put one in the center. And then what I like to do is put a heart, a chocolate heart on top. It says, "Be my Valentine." All right. And we let these chill for a little while in the refrigerator for up to several hours, actually. You could even do this the day before Valentine's Day. And then they are absolutely beautiful. All right, so we're ready to unmold our beautiful passion fruit mousse tarts. So what I've done is I'm going to push up from the bottom. Okay, remember you have that false bottom, so very, very gingerly and very gently support it, and it should slide off. If it doesn't, see how it slides off beautifully? You can actually use a butter knife to just sort of go through it, or a sharp knife. Put it gently on your serving plate, and there you have it. So you have these beautiful tarts for you and your sweetie to share, or like me, get one on your own, right? And don't share. So I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and I hope you've enjoyed this video and you make this wonderful recipe. For more videos and recipes, go to my website, gailsokol.com.